cells. Last time we ended with one of the most abundant glial or neuroglial cells called astrocytes. Today we'll talk about the rest of those neuroglial cells and what they do for the neurons themselves. Microglial cells are going to be phagocytic cells, where they're going to make sure that they're phagocytizing anything that is going to harm the nervous system. Ependymal cells are going to be cells that have cilia attached to them, and cilia, as we know, moves things. And what it's going to do is it's going to help circulate cerebral spinal fluid throughout the brain. So this is the microglial cell, phagocytic cell, and here are the ependymal cells, and you can see that they have cilia, and they're going to be just moving cerebral spinal fluid around. Then you have two cells that are very similar. One is called an oligodendrocyte, and that is going to form the myelin sheath in the central nervous system, and then Schwann cells are going to form myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system. And then there are satellite cells that are going to surround the cell bodies in the peripheral nervous system. So the oligodendrocytes are forming the myelin sheath, but only in the central nervous system. The Schwann cells are forming the myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system, and then you can see the satellite cells are surrounding the cell body or the soma in the peripheral nervous system. Now, neurons are the main cells. We call those, brain cells, nerve cells, and they are the structural units of the nervous system. Now, they're very busy. They're sending messages back and forth. It's all chemical messages through neurotransmitters. They're communicating with all of the neurons around them and organs around them with a neurotransmitter. And we already know that they are composed of a body. That's the cell body or the soma, an axon and a dendrite. And one of the things that's unique about them is they're amitotic, meaning that they do not go through mitosis, so you do not form more brain cells or neurons. Now, with that said, there are exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, the amount of neurons you have or the amount that you're going to have, you're not going to make any more. The plasma membrane or the cell membrane is going to allow for the communication between neurons or the communication between neuron to organ. So this is what a neuron looks like for the most part. This is considered to be a multi-polar neuron, and so it doesn't look like all the nerve cells in your body, but this is one of the basic pictures that we always show. So you have your dendrites. The dendrites are receiving the message. The cell body has the nucleus and the nucleolus, and it's going to interpret the message. And then the axon is going to be sending that impulse or message on to the next neuron, to an organ, whatever that may be. Now, the nerve cell body or soma does contain the nucleus and nucleolus, just like any other cell. It does not have centrioles, and centrioles help with mitosis, if you can remember back in biology. So that's why they do not replicate or do not go through mitosis. And they have a lot of Nissl bodies, which is just another word for rough ER, and they contain an axon hillock. And so what that is it's a cone-shaped area where the axon is going to start from and then go away from the cell body. So the processes are the axons and the dendrites, and they're just extensions from the soma. Again, the dendrite is receiving the message, the axon is taking the message away from the soma. And we call them tracts in the CNS and nerves in the PNS, which is the peripheral nervous system. Now again, dendrites are going to receive the message, and they're usually branched. And so dendrites are branched so that it can receive a lot of information from a lot of different sources. The axons usually are, it's one axon out, but then at the end, at the axon terminal, then it is branched, and then it can communicate with numerous cells at one time. And the axon is going to transmit something called an action potential, which just is going to allow us to transmit the message from neuron to neuron, or it's going to be communicating with an organ. And so the axon, as we learned with the muscles, the axon is going to secrete the neurotransmitters. And those neurotransmitters are the chemicals that are going to be received on the other side of the synaptic cleft so that it can communicate. Now, the myelin sheath on the axon is formed by the oligodendrocytes or the Schwann cells, depending on if you're in the CNS or the peripheral nervous system. And what it's doing is it's insulating the axon from one another. And when you have myelinated axons, because you do have some unmyelinated, it is going to increase the speed of nerve impulse transmission. So it's going to just kind of make sure that the message doesn't get scattered.